And you can just learn from these opportunities and just grow throughout the tournament to have a better shot against the top contenders.
Well, that's the thing. Both their games, unfortunate losses for them, were very close and only losing by a few key mistakes that came into it. So if they are able to kind of bandage those coming into this game, they are in with a real shot. Lyon, they've been looking incredible, but people are saying, are they overperforming or are they just that good? Like, as the tournament progresses, we are going to see just how they're playing, but we are into the pick and ban phase here with Lyon taking on Saigon Jokers already. Bans coming out quick and fast. You see Karma and Rek'Sai ban on the side of Lyon following that Gragas, and Jokers taking away that Echo and the Nasa, very top lane oriented bans. I don't want Jarrah getting his hands on either of those ones.
Interesting that Lyon have actually banned away a lot of junglers. The Rek'Sai and the Gragas gone, which means that Elise has to be somewhere in the priority. Elise or Rek'Sai, sorry, not a Rek'Sai. Rek'Sai gets banned away. Elise has to be the priority right now if you're Lyon Gaming. I think that it's a good champion for Odi. He can have some good early pressure on it. And then Saigon, they're going to be forced to go on to something like the Nidalee or the Graves, which really can't match the same sort of early pressure that an Elise can. So I feel like for Lyon, it is a safe, solid first pick.
It leaves a lot of very good mid laners up on the table as well. You got the Talia, you got the Malzahar as well. They'll have to see what they're willing to give up to take away this lease. But you are right. With that Rek'Sai and Gragas off the table, none of the junglers can really slot into the very strong team compositions as well as the Elise can. So would be wise to pick it up, and looks like they're on the same train of thought. They get that one instantly.
So now you can respond with either the mid lane picks that you were talking about, perhaps the Talia, considered fairly safe right now, but given that only the Vladimir has banned away, there are a lot of options that you can pick into it. You could also look to pick up a very early Sivir here, or maybe a Tahm Kench, because both of them are just fairly safe and well-rounded champions that you can pick into the vast majority of compositions.
Oh, not being banned away. She is picked up here with the Sivir and the Talia coming in for the Saigon Jokers. So two very strong picks. Sivir offers pretty much unrivaled control of any lane she turns into, and with that ultimate, there's not a lot you can do if you're trying to hunker her down. And Talia, we've seen her shine, and we've seen her kind of... It's either a diamond or just another cruddy rock, essentially.
Well, now if you're Lyon, I feel that Cassidy would actually be a very solid pick into the Talia and the Sivir as well. But you might not want to pick it on this rotation. It's a little bit risky. You could try and pick something up for top. Shen is still available, something that actually hasn't seen much prioritization, but is very well-rounded and can pick into a number of compositions. Alternatively, you could also look to pick your support right now. Something like a Braum would be pretty safe up against someone like the Sivir, because Sivir Braum is a very safe and well-rounded lane that's very risky to play against and doesn't really have many weaknesses. So picking up the disengaged form of Braum and also relatively strong laning could just be a very safe pick for Lyon.
That's exactly what they're going to do here. They pick up that Braum in the support as well as the Gangplank. And when you look at the top lane bans that have been taken off the table, seems like a wise pick up here. So have to see what Saigon Jokers answer with.
Well, they know now what the top laner is.
Yep.
Unlikely that they're going to pick up the Shen. You typically want to try and go for something a little bit more aggressive to try and challenge the Gangplank. Aurelia's a little bit risky. You can. Early levels, you would have the advantage. Fiora would be reasonable. Other top laners that you could pick into, something like the Olaf, perhaps. There's quite a few things left available. But excuse me, because nope, I'm good. I thought I was going to sneeze.
I've been there.
I was like, wait, do I need
to
sneeze? No, I'm good. Right. That's why my train of thought was distracted. So if you're Saigon Jokers, support and jungler are typically the best picks. You want to try and hold on to your top laner until you see the entire composition so you can pick around that.
Well, looks like they go for that Hecarim in the jungle with so many banned away. We didn't see it work out too well for Tussle last game, but let's see if Han Yan can make it work a little better. Of course, getting themselves that Nami. So the second Nami consecutively picked here. Saigon Jokers getting themselves that one. The tidal waves were kind of a hit and miss. Sometimes they were very impactful, and other times it was just magic up, you splash.
Tarek would have been the strongest support for the Saigon Jokers. Nami is just not the best support into Braum because of how effective his shield is against the tidal wave and how good his disengage is against, honestly, the Hecarim and the Nami. But now if you want to try and round out your composition for Lyon, Jhin could be a solid pick. A little bit. If you want to go for a bit more lane dominance, Lucian would also be a solid pick. would fit nicely with the gangplank as well because of the mid priority and how well that he synergizes with the Trinity Force spike if you go for the Black Cleaver Ghostblade build. And on top of that, if you're looking for mid lane, you could go for the Malzahar or Cassidy, or perhaps the Cassio that we have been seeing a lot of as well.
There it is, a Cassio getting locked in immediately in that Lucian. He's going to have a very easy time putting on the fancy feet, dodging away from those bubbles. Just have to deal with pretty much unavoidable damage that the Sivir brings to the table, as well as a Cassiopeia. We've seen it do quite well in the past throughout this tournament, so it's going to be the pick up against the Talia. Have to see how well he does, and right now Saigon hovering over that Aurelia with a lot of the kind of flavor top laners being banned away. Seems like that will be the go-to, and there it is.
So this is a bit of a skill matchup. We can talk more about it once we actually get into game, but it's clearly something that Saigon Jokers want a little bit more comfort around. Definitely able to win out on the lane, but the problem is this Hecarim pick and his ability to actually add value to the lanes. Natural lane advantage down the bottom because of the range advantage. In the mid, early pressure will go towards the Talia, and so naturally, you'd think that both junglers will look to try and get an early snowball in the top, because if the Gangplank gets ahead, he's going to snowball out of control. If the Aurelia gets ahead, she's going to snowball. It's a race to Trinity Force in the top lane. So both junglers' impact will be very integral, but when you match up the fact that you have an Elise versus Hecarim, you'd naturally just give the advantage over to the Elise. So I feel like the early game, that's where we're going to have to track.
It looks like we got another title fight up in the top lane between Jural and Ro. Jural has been playing so well this entire tournament long, whether he's on the Echo or the Gnar. This time, it will be the Gangplank, actually. So haven't seen him on that just yet, or maybe we have, I can't remember at the top of my head. There have been so many games we've been having to cover here, but his Gnar and the Echo really stands out to me the most. And going up against this Aurelia, we've seen how well he can do on that as well. So like you said, it's going to be a rush to that Trinity Force.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think this will be a fun game. Lyon want to try and maintain that undefeated record. Remember that to get here, they were undefeated. They went 14-0.
Impressive scoreline.
To then qualify, and they're now 3-0. So far, throughout their competitive record, they're still doing incredibly well, yet to lose a game. And to go 7-0 into the international wildcard will be a great way to make your way into Worlds.
Look, you're exactly right, and they're looking to do so right now. We have Lyon Gaming taking on the Saigon Jokers. Lyon completely undefeated so far, the only team to do so. And Lyon Gaming, Saigon Jokers actually the only team without a win, so both. Well, of course, Saigon looking for their first win. Lyon definitely not looking for their first loss, but looking to make that a solid 4-0.
So let's have a look at the early laning phase. Remember what we talked about in the previous game. If you have the range support, you want to aim to interrupt your opponent's early camp, or at the very least, go for an early push. So this is what we're likely to see from Saigon. That's why you're getting the ward coming out from Lyon's bottom lane. Ideally for them, they want to try and get themselves the Krugs, or at the very least, they want to predict the invade coming out from Saigon and then punish them for trying to set that one up and getting an early push themselves. So early push is very important in the current meta because you have the standard lanes. Getting that early level 2 is a very big swing. But also note that Hecarim is actually starting on the bottom half of his map, which will actually be a better setup for then ganking the top lane very early on.
We'll have to see if he can swing that matchup into Ro's favor, because we saw how impactful top laners have been throughout this entire tournament, especially when they have something like the Aurelia. When Jural got ahead in one of his previous games, he was absolutely just dominating anyone that came into close proximity with him. So if Ro can kind of emulate that power, it should be a very easy time for him. But Gangplank, he's never truly behind. You can always ult across the map, and doesn't matter how weak you are, that ult is always going to be massive zoning potential, massive control. And I think that's the closest vote we've seen, and we're up to day 3, the last game.
That's surprising. I am surprised that we're seeing a fan vote. Clearly some GPL fans, or Southeast Asia fans, sorry, are definitely in heavy favor of Saigon Jokers being able to pull out the win right now. As we do experience a very slight issue, which has now been very quickly resolved.
Look, we have a great team here working round the clock to give us the best League of Legends action available. IWCQ. White Lotus is doing a good job of CSing here. He's almost up a wave over Celebrity, who, like you said, they didn't start a camp. So
mid lane.
He might be in a little bit of trouble. They worked ground. Gonna have to flash out. There's Oddie, though. Can he get his fangs down to get this one? Gets the repel off in time. Does he have the flash available? No, he used the flash to get into range to save Saya. but already a blood brawl in the mid lane.
My word, Warzone being able to come out ahead in the 1 versus 1, but now look at Hanyan trying to set up a gank in the top. Award should very well spot him out, but here we go.
Oh, there's a Ghost immediately. He's going in full force, straight onto a barrel, knocks him out of it though. Jarrell forced to flash in, try to get the movement speed, not going to happen, uses an orange, but it is definitely not K. Grow flashes in, but first blood going over to Hanyan, and this is already 3 minutes in. We've seen mid lane nearly die, we've seen top lane get a kill. Saigon Jokers, we said they play aggressive, and they're showing us exactly why.
This could not be a better start for the side of Saigon Jokers. We wanted to see an early aggressive Hecarim, and we get just that. Oddie's attention, it was drawn to the mid lane. He wanted to try and get a kill down onto Warzone after he pretty much forces Saya out of lane. Something that we would not expect from Saya whatsoever. Very surprising result, but I mean, Lyon already on the back foot early on. But now, if we move down to the bottom lane, definitely not going the way it should. Typically, you have a range advantage on the Nami, so you should be bullying this lane very much. But the power of Lucian, demonstrating that he will typically come out ahead in the 1v1. Very mindful of the fact that Arsa could just jump in. Now, Warzone.
Oh, he's in trouble once again. Saya just picks that one up. A nice return gank from Oddie, realizing no Ghost, no Flash available. Easy kill for Warzone. Saya picks it up.
Good setup from the side of Lyon. They realized that they made a bit of a misplay early on, but they could rectify that mistake with another gank. And honestly, this was the praise that we were providing Oddie early on. Very smart player. He wastes no time in setting up his mid laner for success. Very quickly rotates back around. The fact that Warzone is so low in terms of mobility when playing this Talia means that it's very easy to set up a gank, because White Lotus...
Celebrity's going in, does pop the spell shield actually, but the sight's set onto Su. There's the cocoon, actually stuns him out. The concussive blows comes down too, forced to use the heal, exhausts down. Very, very low is Celebrity, but he survives with his life.
But they get every single summoner spell out. Now Hanyan, he's trying to respond with a bit of aggression on his own, but... he is not going to be able to do it. Realizes that is a big minion wave in the mid lane. Warzone would not really be able to provide that much support. But you can see now the pressure continuing in the bottom lane. And wow, action already across all over the map. And we thought that the snowball would begin in the top lane, but look at the CS differential. Unfortunately for Rowe, he wasn't quite able to get the shove off. That meant that Jarrell actually picked up a massive minion wave, and that actually enabled him to not only get the experience advantage, but a pretty hefty CS advantage too.
Look, I feel like one of the consistent traits we see when it comes to great junglers is they're never wasting time. Every single action they do is always affecting the map in a positive way for their team. We've seen Hanyani tried to go for a gank in mid, couldn't make it happen, kind of hangs around there, denies the Raptors, but then just goes off, does his own thing. But Oddie, he's always in the right position to make something happen. He's burning a summoner, he's burning something. Just can't be said about Hanyan right now.
No, it cannot, but he is playing the Hecarim. Ideally, he wants to try and get this very early level 6 so that it is easier to set up for the ganks, but hasn't quite found it yet. Warzone now really starting to struggle. Now, this mid lane matchup, I wanted to talk about a little bit earlier on, as Warzone being forced to Ghost. Wow. So that's typically how the matchup goes.
Yeah.
Cassio has the advantage because she just straight up out DPS's Warzone. The advantage that Warzone has is if he puts a lot of work ground behind him, he can maintain a very solid gap between him and the Cassio. And the way in which you trade is you just constantly, every time the Cassio walks up aggressively, you just throw out the Q, you hit him with a bunch of rocks, and then you just disengage. And if you consistently do that, you can come out ahead of the Cassio matchup, which is what we saw early on. But unfortunately, he's been forced to overextend in the lane because of the setup of the wave, which is resulting in the Saya being able to be as aggressive as he wants. Warzone has to be very careful because he has no summoner spells. And thanks to the gank from Oddie as well, that's really just made Warzone's life extremely difficult. But fair play to him for maintaining a very even CS mark.
Solo laners are all level 6 now. Keep in mind that Saya does have that combat summoner spell, so we'll have the advantage over Warzone unless he can make some plays happen across the map. You can see already getting wards out of the river, trying to make his way up to top, make something happen, but not finding it just yet. And Sivir just doing Sivir things, clearing out the waves. Quick smart.
Now Oddie posturing around the top half of the map. He does need to give that blue over to the Cassiopeia. Very important in this matchup to make sure that you do have blue control, enables you to be as aggressive as you want, and the same goes for Warzone in terms of wave clear, because he should just be looking to try and get that early Morello, complete the Royalize as soon as he can, because with those 2 items, this is where you start to see the power that Talia can bring in terms of kiting and team fight damage. We could also look to see some roaming coming out from the Talia. She now has her Weaver's Wall, and top lane would really be the best place to try and force that play. Given that your bottom lane, Sivir, you don't need to get her early on snowballing. She's going to hit a big spike when she gets 2-3 items. She's very much about team fighting, whereas the Aurelia is more about the laning, the side lane pressure. And so being able to snowball her and get her that early Trinity Force is what's going to be big for the Saigon Jokers. So.
Look. And not to mention, the only champion on the LYN roster that really has a hard time in the side lanes getting over that wall is Dural. Should be quite easy for White Lotus and Arce to just dash over the wall, stand behind me, get them to safety. But Gangplank will have to burn the flash if he wants to get out of there. But Warzone just clearing out the waves here and there. These guys both have blue Celebrity. Was low, but he does have the sustain advantage that Nami does provide. White Lotus using that culling, trying to go for the kill here. Flashes in, gets the Q straight under tower, and White Lotus singing praise all tournament long, and you guys can see why.
Level 7 Lucian to the level 5 Sivir. This is the power of Lucian with going for the all-in. I mean, the risk that you have to be careful of with this Lucian Braum lane is the fact that it's so easy for Braum to just dive in, throw down the ultimate, you get the passive down, and it's so easy for White Lotus to follow up. He didn't even need it. He just throws out the culling, Celebrity, he's forced to eat all of it, and then White Lotus goes for such an aggressive flash, gets his team a kill, and Lyon just seemed to have retaken control over the game.
Look, Celebrity still had heal available. I don't know if it was either just coming off cooldown or he didn't expect the piercing light damage, but he goes down, not putting up too much of a fight, and White Lotus completely spiraling this bot lane out of control. Good damage down onto Oddie. Here comes Hanyan. There's the repel to get him to safety. A good wall. They should be able to pick this one up. Hecarim does, but Saya trying to take him down. There is Arce. Gets a nice double knock up. He's so low. Just 2 more attacks will break it. Wasn't in the back doing great damage. 1 more attack. Wasn't gets it onto Arce. And Saigon Jokers find a pick, get 2 kills.
So, unfortunately for Lyon right there, White Lotus had just backed away, but Saya wants to try and get something back. Not going to quite be able to do it. But still, overall, net gain for Saigon Jokers. They get themselves another 2 kills. The play from Arce was very promising. He thought that if I could just get the crowd control down, then my mid laner can rotate round. But Saya was being zoned away by Warzone, who very smartly was just using his abilities to zone, just trying to force Saya away from the team fight and allow the rest of his teammates to get the kill down onto Arce, which overall does result in them getting the kills that they wanted. But just look at the difference between the AD carries right now. It is so huge so early on into the game.
Look, that's exactly right. 16,000 to basically 16,000, about 400 and change separates these 2 teams right now, and it's all that advantage in the bot lane.
So this is the mistake that Arnie make. Definitely underestimated the burst because, I mean, trying to clear out that ward, it's understandable why you try to do it. But then you see Arce coming around, trying to provide the CC that's needed for Saya to then come in. But Saya was just a little bit too afraid to hard commit. And then if you look to your mini-map, then White Lotus was nowhere to be seen. He had to back. He had to pick up his Caulfield's Warhammer and Serrated Dirk as heal forced to be used as Arce. Takes a little bit too much damage.
Look, Lyon, they know where their advantages lie. It's in this bot lane. They want to get White Lotus as far ahead as possible, but underestimating that tower damage forces the heal, but they do get that first brick gold, so still a bit in their pockets. Gets them about 1.2k ahead at the moment, and looking at the gold discrepancies here, and 1.4 in favor of the Lucian, that's huge.
Just
a BF sword and change.
We talked about the mid-game spike synergy that they have with the Gangplank and the Lucian. I mean, Cassio, she does a lot of damage regardless as long as she can land that poison. And now it looks like Saigon, they want to try and get an advantage for themselves as Hanyan. Trying to set up for a dive, but the pink ward is going to spot him out. Oddie is in the vicinity. Is going to dissuade this gank as well. So Saigon Jokers definitely... They were on... I don't want to say a time limit because their late game is actually pretty phenomenal. But then when you think of Cassio and Gangplank, it's pretty hard to say that Lions don't exactly have a solid late game themselves. But in terms of the mid-game spike, definitely heavily in favor of Lyon. The only real advantage that Saigon are going to have is this great team fighting prowess, because you have the Nami, you have the Sivir, you have the frontline Hecarim, you have the flanking potential of the Aurelia as well. But they might not even get to that point because Lyon, they're using this AD carry to their advantage, rotating out to the top half of the map. They're going to very quickly pick up another turret.
They initiate the lane, swap, and it forces a Saigon Jokers to answer. Sue and Celebrity,
TP.
they're already so far behind. He's only level 6. Can't really do much about that row. Has to walk down to the bot lane. Cancels the TP. Jirol just going to teleport down to answer. Going to catch a nice big creep wave for himself.
So many good things coming out from Lyon here. What they do is they realize that the bot tower is gone. They rotate up to the top half of the map. They now realize that, hey, maybe we can catch Aurelia off guard. But Aurelia is just backing off as the Lions bottom lane reach the top half. This means that they can try and force the play. They try and look for the tower, but Saigon Jokers read the play. They respond in kind. They keep the turret alive. And Ro actually uses his teleport to a ward that was behind them to try and scare Lyon off of the turret. It works, but that also allows Jirol to say, hey, if you're going to use your TP, I can use mine. So he TPs to the bottom half of the map, and he's able to soak up all this juicy farm as we now see the Weaver's Wall.
Here comes Warzone. He gets knocked off early. Jirol misses the flash, but Ro can't seem to find anything, and the cannon barrage under tower enough to keep him safe, and a lot of summoner spells expended here and no kills going to either team.
Good response from Jirol to flash the knock-up coming out from Warzone.
Yeah.
He did not care about getting over the wall because, in all honesty, he had a great opportunity to get himself a kill. He decided not to overcommit and just be happy with his life as Hanyan trying to set up a play.
He really wants to get onto White Lotus here. Forces the flash. There's the ultimate. Fears them back in. This should be a free kill for Celebrity. He gets it. Tidal Wave and Bubble. Not going to land. Arce knocks them both up, but the Jarl just going to call it a day. Back off and take some minions, maybe get some chip damage on the tower.
Arce could have used his ultimate a little bit sooner, but he decided to hold on to it. Unfortunately, because of that, it resulted in Hanyan being able to get behind White Lotus and force the fear up towards his teammates. That's going to be a big shutdown bonus. That's going to allow Celebrity to close the gap ever so slightly, and now Saigon should be able to respond with a turn in kind.
Doing a lot of damage down onto that one, but Warzone constantly being threatened by Saya. We've seen time and time again, just hits 1Q, forces a flash, forces the ghost, so they are getting themselves kind of back into a manageable state between the AD carries, but they're forfeiting a lot in the meantime.
Now, where is Oddie, is the question, because early on we saw him make good plays around the mid, but since then, after his death, he hasn't really done anything else on the map. He has now completed his first big jungle item, but when you compare the two junglers, Hanyan's been the guy that's been roaming around the map, and he could have completed his Trinity Force right now. He's 2-0-2. Instead, he decides to rush that early magic resistance to deal with the Elise and the Cassio. And Oddie hasn't really been able to set anything up for the rest of his team. He hasn't been playing around his strong side of the map. He hasn't looked to set up any more plays in the mid lane. And to be honest, the momentum that Lyon had built themselves up early on had definitely slowed down, even though they still hold on to the gold lead.
Yeah, they get themselves another tower, so gets it about 1,000 and some. Nearing that 2,000 lead. But like you mentioned, Oddie, we praised his decision-making early on this game, but he's kind of just been a non-factor after the 10-minute mark or so. Like you mentioned, he died, had to go back, didn't really want to commit to anything, and it's all been on Hanyan. But back in this mid lane Warzone, he's been forced under tower time and time again. It's allowed Saya to get a little bit of a lead here, and down on the bot road, just doing a good job of freezing that wave. He is behind about 25 to Jirol, sitting on 1-0, but they both have their Trinity Forces completed. Maybe looking to brawl for the Dragon. We haven't seen either team go for it, but it is a Cloud Drake, so it's understandable.
Well, it's still an objective that both teams should look to try and play around. As I thought I saw the Nami ultimate come out then. It looks like she was just spamming laugh. Bit of an interesting setup if that would have been the case. But now Lyon rotating around to the mid lane. A final tier 1 turret that they want to try and pick themselves up. The setup for this is going to be difficult to take because when you look at the wave clear from the Talia and the Sivir, Lyon are probably going to be there for quite a while. Yeah. Given that Lucian does have a pretty short range, getting close to the turret is going to be a bit tricky for him, especially with the risk of this flank coming out from Hanyan. So the better play for them is to actually play around a lane that isn't Talia. Because of how good she is at clearing these waves. And Dragon could be a good way to force this. Remember the mid-game spike that we were talking about? Lucian completed the Ghostblade. You also have the Morello done for the Cassiopeia and the Trinity Force. But it looks like the Saigon are actually going to be the ones to set this up. And, good use of the Talia wall to prevent Lyon from being able to try and contest.
Look, of course, us with our God vision, we know they're not even going to try for it, but it's still utilizing everything, every advantage that your kit has to offer. So props to him. They're not going to be looking for any plays off to the side lanes anytime soon. So denies all potential at a steal from Lyon. And it looked like Lyon wanted to go for that mid lane tower. They saw the Sivir back, but without the appropriate vision, she's going to come back to lane. She's got herself a BF sword completed now, as well as the critical chance cloak. So she'll have a little bit of an advantage here. Honestly, she can start hitting them.
I think that was a bit of a misplay from Lyon, simply because they they wanted to force a fight right
Yeah.
now. They're very strong right now. They're in a good position to try and set themselves up for success, and they didn't take advantage of it. The Cloud Drake would have been the objective that Saigon are most likely to try and fight them for, or at the very least draw Saigon into a position where LYN could actually force a fight, and instead they choose to go back to not really pick up any significant items. They may have been sitting on a bit of gold, but look, I mean, all White Lotus did was pick himself up a Phage, so they missed a window of opportunity, and now Saigon are going to continue to be able to stall, because LYN can't push down this mid turret, especially with a Sivir and a Talia there. They can push these side lanes, but they're too afraid to commit to these tier 2s, and Rift Herald is really the only other objective they could try and set up for, but Saigon are very unlikely to try and contest that objective. They'll just give it away for free, because in terms of dueling power, the Irelia has that ever so slight edge, especially at this point in the game. So honestly, LYN just missed their one opportunity, and now they just have to be careful of the fact that Saigon do have a pretty good scaling comp.
Looks like Oddie going to donate the blue buff over to Seiya. Ro and Hanyan just holding hands right now, kind of predicting the dive, but Hanyan actually sticking around here. As we can see, going in on Chirel. There are a lot of barrels here. There's the ulti. Here comes the backup, though. Flashes over to try and hit the cocoon. Doesn't get it. Ro goes down. Now Hanyan gets exhausted. He is quite fast, so he should be able to get himself to safety. Here comes White Lotus. So that's 5 members strong for LYN, and the wall not going to be enough to save Saigon Jokers.
They try to force a play onto the gangplank, was just a little bit too overzealous. Saigon, you have a comp that doesn't need to force anything at this point. It's LYN that needs to be the one trying to make these plays, and you're just giving them free kills. Sure, LYN might lose a turret in the bottom lane, but they only care about this mid lane turret, and with this many members, they should be able to get it for themselves.
Well, that's exactly right. Kind of playing into what LYN want to do right now, and you've got to give them props for having all 5 members up in that top lane, kind of predicting here, as we saw, Seiya did just get donated that blue buff, but they are going to go take control of this mid lane tower, take it down, and Baron spawning in 10 seconds. That means that the Rift Herald is going back to the Void now, so they won't have that neutral objective to fight over for quite a while, so they might just be waiting on the next dragon spawn. We can see Jirel hitting a waypoint, a milestone rather, getting closer to that fully upgraded ship's cannon.
Yep. I like cannons. I like gold, so Gangplank has everything. Speaking of everything right now, Seiya, he might not have much.
He's just riding the wave to victory. Is Ro. Can he get the stun down? It's going to the slow. Going to be enough. White Lotus immediately exhausted and can't seem to find anything. Maybe he's missed his opportunity, like he said. Only had that Phage on him for quite some time. Maybe waiting for that Black Cleaver before he goes for anything more.
So Seiya makes a bit of an oops. Oversteps in the mid lane. Allows Nami to just throw out the ultimate, cut off his escape route, and then Ro just comes in with the setup. I mean, he's a fast Irelia. Even with the tenacity changes, still considered very strong. And so that's how Warzone ends up burning his flash. Thanks for the replay. Seiya just being a little bit too aggressive. But it forced his flash out, which is why he wasn't able to escape earlier on. So that actual play, because it didn't net him anything, ends up costing him his death later on.
We did it. We connected the dots.
We connected the dots. We did it, Batman.
But I feel like Warzone has only been using his summoners defensively. Every time we look, Seiya walks up, Warzone goes, he flashes, he just runs away, runs scared, and hasn't really done too much. He did get a good skirmish off early on, when, of course, Oddie and Arce were over-aggressive. Warzone maybe in trouble. White Lotus just going to straight 100 to 0 him. Doesn't even get hurt until he walks over the pebbles there, but that's why you don't burn your flash at the side of a Cassiopeia.
Oh, that was great.
Yeah.
Like, that is the definition of getting cold. I mean, that was truly outstanding. The movement speed of the workground was not enough. You have no dashes to escape it.
Yeah.
And honestly, White Lotus with the angles and everything, just fantastic setup. Now the miasma being used to try and zone away Saigon, as they are just barely able to keep that tier 2 alive. But it looks like LYN, they don't want to give up on the pressure just yet.
Forces the Irelia ult out as their wave clear was black and white screen there, just waiting to respawn. And could see that Arce was doing a great job of putting up the shield, defending all the minions to get maximum amount of damage possible.
Sivir is top lane. LYN could have tried to force this, but they like the disengage because they want to now set up for the dragon that's going to be spawning. It is the ocean, but it's still, again, that objective that you just want to try and take off the map. It's better for you to have it than your opponents, and it could also be a way to actually draw the enemy out, and then you can look to try and force the fight, which is what you want to, what your composition wants to do at this point in the game. Just looking across some of the items that have been finished right now. 2 items done for the Lucian, level 13 to the level 11 Celebrity. He is actually on par of being the highest level in the game right now, which is pretty incredible for an AD carry at 22 minutes. 233 farm at 23 minutes as well. So White Lotus definitely having a great performance, something that you did mention earlier on. So a player that we needed to keep our eyes on, well, has definitely been doing a great job.
Well, look, going back up to the highlight match, of course, it was Dural versus Rowe, and Dural kind of single-handedly out-CSing him very well right now. Hasn't picked himself up a kill, but using that ultimate to get 2 assists and avoiding some of those potential lethal ganks down in the bot. Using that flash, Ocean Dragon will be picked up on the side of LYN. It will be an Infernal spawning next, but all in all, LYN, their laning phase has gotten them in a very favorable position right now. 3,000 gold in the lead, has an extra tower up. Kills are tied, though.
Yeah, but what are kills to towers?
Exactly, right? Not to mention that LYN got the first tower and the first blood, right?
It's always made me wonder how the towers actually just drop gold. Is there like a bag of money inside them?
I'm sure they shoot magical bolts, right? I'm sure there's a lot of valuable materials in there you could salvage and maybe go back and
I feel like that's
sell
a
on the black
lot of
market.
time when you're in the middle of a battle.
Look, Brom's a tough guy, man. I'm sure he can carry half a tower on his own. Maybe tie one to Saya's tail, can slither on back.
All right. Personally, I'm more of an advocate of just a bag of gold in the towers. Someone's just left it in there being like, yeah, it'll be fine.
That's careless.
It'll be fine.
That's just straight careless. And once the first tower goes, they go, oh, maybe our gold isn't so fine. So they go take one of the bags out of each tower, take it back.
Exactly. And they're like, maybe if there's less gold, it'll deter our opponents.
No, it just makes them even hungrier for those item spikes. And the shopkeeper's like, where'd you get all this extra gold from? You didn't touch my tower gold, did you?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We've deduced the mystery. We're on fire today.
That's exactly right. So a LYN right now, they've been playing incredibly well, looking to get themselves a massive advantage here still. Got that gold lead, all that extra tower gold giving them the advantage here. They're setting up the vision around this Baron, but going for the cocoon onto Su. There's a massive true damage from that gangplank. Forces the flash. Can the Cull get him? Oh, going to get body blocked away here, but that's a lot of summoner spells and ultimates used just on the support. He gets himself to safety as well.
Question is now, what can LYN force off of this? Because it is only the support. Yes, he loses his exhaust and he loses his flash, but in terms of the actual objectives to play around, LYN haven't built themselves up enough of an advantage to try and force something like the Baron. And with the Aurelia still applying pressure in the bottom side of the map, LYN are just trying to take whatever objective they can. Red buff will be on the menu, and handing this over to White Lotus is definitely something that they want to try and do as the Weaver's Wall comes through.
Do they want to block anyone off here? They might just go onto Saya, but he's able to flash himself to safety and does have that Petrifying Gaze available should they go for the initiate. Not going to happen though, so Weaver's Wall for a flash. It's a very important flash as well, as we've seen how Saya loves to use it aggressively. Gameplank just going to be holding the waves right now, but the flank could be coming in here.
Look at the setup, though. We have White Lotus still sitting in the top lane. A fight right now for LYN would not be what they want. They're just trying to dissuade Saigon from pushing down this mid, and now Saigon, they have no idea what to do. They're trying to disengage, they're trying to push, and they're just going to give a free tower over to LYN.
Look, I'm sure there's a lot of things running through their heads right now, and they can't seem to answer them all at once. It's kind of falling to pieces here, getting the gold lead further and further ahead are this Lyon Gaming squad. Now in about 4,000. No dragons up just yet. And you said they're not in a position to fearlessly contest this Baron just yet. So they're looking for their advantages where they can, corralling them around the map, using this very powerful Lucian on White Lotus to pretty much just take towers solo.
Very interesting build path coming out from Celebrity.
Yeah. I was just thinking that earlier before that.
What we've seen a lot of from Civiz is actually the Phantom Dancer. Essence Reaver, not that unconventional, but the Phantom Dancer offers a little bit more value in terms of these mid-game fights. But going for the Rapid Fire Cannon, want to get a bit of extra range, definitely helps with taking down these turrets.
Sure.
Also, if you can proc your W and land it onto a target when they're all grouped up, as now White Lotus flashing.
Force a flash, but look at the stun coming out of Say. Hits 3 members of Cannon Barrage, completely stopping any of the potential engage. Hunyan, he's in the backline. He can't seem to fight White Lotus. He stays alive, and now it's all going to hell for Saigon Jokers. They do get 1, but they lose 3 in the process. The Repel comes up to safety. Here comes Dural. He's looking for Warzone, but Warzone, he has so much zoning potential still left in him.
And now LYN with a big team fight win want to try and push their advantage advantage. They're pressing down the mid lane. The Braum is still very healthy in Warzone. He's just doing what he can to zone away the opponents, and he's going to throw out the wall. Great use of that Weavers to just deny the pressure coming out from Lyon. This is going to mitigate it, but not for long because the minion wave is still on its way.
It's going to be crashing under the tower now. RC just blocking up any potential damage. White Lotus looks like he wants to go for the kill. Warzone gets knocked up, one shot away from concussive blow. They've turned their attention onto Su as Duel picks up the tower in the back. There's a Cully, takes him out, looking for one more into Su. Gets him, gets bubbled in the process. Double kill coming up, and now he's got his sights set on the Hecarim. Can this horsey get to safety? Poor Siva trying to come in, but gets completely, destroyed.
White Lotus, they have a family, please. You are just going absolutely insane, and the pressure just seems to be unrelenting as Lyon look to take themselves another turret.
Yeah, they are doing such a good job right now. Look at White Lotus, 612, 300 CS, putting the team in his backpack right now. We mentioned this guy's positioning and ability to catch people off with that culling has been on point all game long, and it's getting from bad to worse. 8,000 gold, a Lyon in the lead, and theoretically, they should be setting up for this Baron now.
Oh, yeah. Lyon, their next objective is definitely going to be picking up that Baron. Dragon also spawning about 30 seconds, but it looks like Ro is next on the menu.
Oh, he's just going to get hit by that massive true damage proc of the Gangplank ulti, trying to turn it around, gets the stun onto Saya, but the petrifying gaze slow enough for Oddie to sink in the fangs and take him out.
They get themselves another kill. Ro overextends in the mid lane, and this is just going to make the decision all the more easier for the side of Lyon Gaming. And they're not even giving us an opportunity to break down how that last fight even happened, because bear in mind, this was a situation where Saigon just could not decide where they wanted to do. They ended up giving away the top tower, and to be honest, they still didn't make a decision in such a long time that White Lotus is actually able to rejoin the fight. But let's just jump onto the end of it, where White Lotus just goes absolutely insane. Su using a fantastic thing that I forget the name of to actually remove the CC from White Lotus. The Mikhails, that's the one. And that enables White Lotus then to just go ham on Su. He has no way to escape. He then goes super aggressive onto the Hecarim as well, and he just shows no sign of mercy to his opponents. 6-1 and 2, as you mentioned earlier on. But really how that all set up early on was just a matter of Hanyan overextending. He goes very deep into the backline. He thinks that with the Trinity Force, he has enough damage to be able to get a kill down onto White Lotus, but he's just kiting so well. He has great peel coming out from Arce. And then that just enables Duel to just get so much damage down, combined with Saya, who really got a fantastic ultimate off onto two big key members. So honestly, just a fantastic team fight coming out from Lyon. They said earlier on in an interview that they love to fight, and you can see why with such fantastically mechanical, proficient players.
Look, Arce just been doing a great job. You mentioned that's why Braum is so good. Anyone that comes into the backline, all it takes is one auto, and then everyone has CC on that team. They are starting the Baron down to about 6,000 health. It is low. I don't even think Hanyan going to get there in time, and free Baron.
Yep. That was just Baron for breakfast, really.
Yeah.
There was very little that Saigon could do to respond. They had the vision on it when it was about 40% health, and they just had to give it up. There was nothing they could do now. With Lyon having one Infernal Drake underneath their belt as well as a Baron, it's now really their game to lose. But we have to wonder how they're going to be able to break into the base of Saigon, because one thing they have to respect is the fact that Saigon have a fantastic team fighting composition. The Sivir and the Hecarim, very good at dealing with all these grouped up members. So if Lyon commit a little bit too much to one tower, there is always that potential of Saigon being able to get the collapse, being able to get that turnaround. So Lyon, let's see how well they're going to be able to break into the base.
Well, White Lotus has got his Infinity Edge completed now, so if he wasn't dealing damage before, which he was, he's going to be dealing exponentially more amount. Oddie just going to be getting himself that blue buff. As I say, Saya comes over. Much better recipient of that one. Doesn't get it anyway. So, they do have the Baron buff. They are threatening the mid lane inhibitor here. Arce, that's a full combo coming out of Warzone, and it's doing about half his health. He only has one magic resistance item as well, so even with a Void Stuff on the side of Ro, I was going to suggest he picks one of them up, but he's got one.
Yeah. And
Power of Braum.
The power of Braum has completed the locket. And there's the Mikhail's Crucible ready and waiting for Tsu once again. Now, it looks like that the 1-4 is being set up by Lyon. They're just keeping the Gangplank in the bottom lane. 0, 1, and 7 so far.
Cassio down.
Well, I was just going to say, was that the sound of a Cassio ult? Tries to throw it out. Not going to pick anything up. But look at this. You can see Hanyan coming in for the flank.
Yeah, he wants to go for this one. There's the onslaught of shadows into the backline. He's going to get stunned up immediately, even without the Cassie ult. They turn him to dust. Now, Rowe trying to get down on Just Say about White Lotus being the primary damage dealer now. Celebrity, he's left just watching his team fall into Crubbles and Sue. You're a fast fish, but not that fast. Sinks the teeth and takes him out.
You could not have had a better setup if you are the Saigon Jokers, but Lyon just know how to respond, and they do so beautifully. With 5 members strong, only Celebrity left alive, I think Lyon are going to close out this game and maintain their perfect record.
Oh, one more auto attack should do it. A massive 679 damage crit. Full Baron empowered minions in the top cannon to help them out. And with Dural, Saya, and White Lotus just dishing the damage out, they take down the first Nexus turret, take down the second. The Nexus now under fire. And here you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Lyon Gaming 4-0 undefeated by day number 3. Impressive.
Well, Lyon, you are certainly putting on a good show so far. Saigon Jokers continue to go on without a win on the boards. Yep. Definitely struggles. Definitely show a little bit more this game. I was definitely impressed with Hanyan and how he set up the pressure in the top lane. In all honesty, the weakness there for Saigon was how they fell apart in the bottom lane. But also respect to Oddie for setting up that play, because remember that he did come in at around level 3, level 4. He was able to get himself the kill down in the bottom lane. White Lotus then very quickly snowballed off of that, especially getting himself the solo kill down onto that Sivir, going for the flash underneath the turret. And then he just maintained that aggression throughout the game, rotating into the top half of the map, in the mids, and just really a very, very impressive performance from White Lotus.
Look, Lyon Gaming absolutely shining all tournament long so far. Day 3 completely undefeated. They still have a few tough opponents ahead of them. But playing like this, they shouldn't be too worried. They have to be beaming with confidence right now. And all throughout the game, it seemed like they were all on the same page. Never once did we think, why is he here? What is he doing there? They were always watching each other's back. Every time the Hecarim was in the backline, Braum just keeping him safe. White Lotus seemed like he was untouchable all game long.
Thing is, I mean, when we saw this gang from Hecarim in the top half of the map, I felt like that things were going to heavily swing in their favor. But Lyon Gaming, they just respond in kind, punishing the fact that Saigon tried to force a play in the top side of the map. And I just remember us having this conversation where Saigon were in a situation where, honestly, they didn't need to try and force anything. And this was the fight that we wanted to see earlier on. Fantastic ultimate coming out from the Casio. Immediately forces the Aurelia back. Hanyan is overextended in the enemy base. White Lotus gets away on such a small amount of health. And even though Saya loses his life, you then get the great outplay coming out from White Lotus ever so slightly later on in this play, where he just goes to town on the members of Saigon Jokers and pretty much secures the victory for his team.
Look, when I say it never seemed like any of them were out of position, just looking at a few of these replays, you can see that Rowe and Hanyan were constantly in these very questionable places on the map, and White Lotus, like you said, they have a family, man, please.
And this final team fight from Saigon, honestly, the setup itself was promising. The flank coming in from the Hecarim was exactly what they needed to try and get themselves a team fight win. But at the end of the day, Lyon were just too far ahead. The positioning and overall outplay coming out from White Lotus and his support were just too much for the side of Saigon to handle. And then just to add insult to injury, they pick up another kill to round things out. And in all honesty, White Lotus was the celebrity in this game.
That's a great way to put it. And these guys really showing no chinks in the armor, no real weaknesses, nothing but strength to talk about this Lyon Gaming squad. So it's really going to be on their next competitors to try and find a strategy that's working against these guys, because I feel they've gone up against a lot of very strong teams but have prevailed every single time.
Oh yeah, they certainly have. And now I'm extremely excited for Lions versus the Chiefs, because Chiefs called them out. They said that, hey, I think that they're just a team that got lucky early on. They've had early leads. Well, now, Chiefs, we've seen 2 games from the Lions where they didn't necessarily snowball off of an early lead and have just been playing very calculated, been very methodical in their play styles, have had very solid drafts, and have overall just had very solid performances.
Look, and you're exactly right. When you call out a team like that, you better be able to back up your words, because 4-0 right now, a very impressive scoreline. like we said, they're really struggling to find out anything that teams can do with this. And looking at the MVP, who else but White Lotus? 9 kills, 1 death, 4 assists, and a heck of a lot of farm under his belt.
Jarol was robbed. No, obviously I'm kidding. He did have a great performance on the gangplank, but you cannot take away from White Lotus just performing very impressively down in the bottom lane, utilizing his lead the way in which he should, and just his positioning in those team fights was outstanding, showing you how you can play Lucian so effectively.
Look, and we've seen not a lot of Lucians throughout the tournament. It's mainly been the Ashe, it's mainly been the Jhin. So when we were talking through the draft phase of which one they were going to pick, you initially said, Jhin, smart pick here. They go for the Lucian anyway, and it worked out wonders for them. Yeah,
it certainly did. I mean, the Lucian makes a lot of sense into the Sivir, but when you pair it up with a Braum and you go up against the Nami, typically the Nami is playing extremely aggressively. She's using her sustain to be able to force her opponents out of lane, but on top of that, just mitigate any of the poke that is returning. And then also Sivir has the push. But because they weren't able to get that early push, Lucian got the early level 2, and really they then had maintained control throughout the laning phase. And then just to add insult to injury, you had Oddie come down to the bottom half of the map, and he's really the thing that snowballed the lane and allowed White Lotus to be that powerhouse.
Look, it's interesting to say, because you're right, they helped their Hecarim start at that bottom side of the jungle, so they didn't get themselves that early level 2, hoping to just get through it with sustain and with Sivir's wave control. But once Lucian hits that power spike that we all know and love, it was just game over, it seemed.
Yeah, it certainly was. And in all honesty, Saigon's had very little answers. All they had to do was buy time, though. We talked about it a lot. They still had a good team fighting composition. They had the Sivir, they had the Hecarim. They maybe could have gotten to a point where the Aurelia was so strong in the side lane where the Gangplank couldn't have been able to deal with her. But unfortunately, they try to force a play. They think that, hey, if we get this kill onto Gangplank, then the Aurelia will be big enough to then go into a side lane, and that's everything that we need. But the play just goes awry for them. They get absolutely nothing right. And then that really is where things just started to crumble for Saigon, and they had no way of clawing their way back into the game.
Look, and not to mention, it was a pretty miserable time for poor Warzone in the mid. Every single time that Saya kind of stepped forward, slithered forward, he's forced to either ghost or flash to safety. So we never really saw that Weaver's Wall come into effect. We saw it once in the bot lane, didn't result in a kill. Then every other time it was either helping them secure Dragon or defending a tower for a few seconds. But that's not really where Talia's level 6 strengths lie.
Yeah, her ability to roam is very powerful, and we didn't see it this game. Because you can just shove up against the Cassio. Yes, she has a lot of kill pressure in the lane, which we did see multiple times throughout the laning phase, but she can't really just stop you from doing what you do so well, which is this wave clear. And they could have looked to set up a play top. They could have even looked to set up a play bot. They never take advantage of it, and then as a result, this Talia pick just doesn't really come into fruition. And this is one of the risks that you do have if you try to pick it very early on, because there are so many mid laners that were available for the counter pick.
Look, and speaking of the champions that were available, we saw a Hecarim and a Nami in this game. So 2 of the first times we've seen them throughout the tournament, this time both on the same team. Do you think Nami is kind of the go-to when either the Karma or you're not feeling confident on the Bard?
I feel like that when you look at the things that were banned away, Taric would have been a very solid pick here. I mean, when you think about the mid-game power that this composition has, the Gangplank, the Lucian, the Cassio, when this team hard engages onto you, you can just throw out the Taric ult, you buy a lot of time. The duration is very similar to that of the duration of the Gangplank ultimate. The Lucian damage is heavily mitigated, which enables the Sivir to position in a way where she can get her massive teamfight damage off, and instead they try to go for lane dominance with the Nami. She doesn't have the same sort of mid-game prowess that these other melee supports do, and then you saw what happens because she just offered very little. There was very little that she was just able to impact these mid-game fights, and it's just a risk. We saw it happen earlier on in the day, where with the Ezreal Nami, yes, that's where you get the lane dominance, and that's where you snowball it into a victory. But if you don't get that lane dominance, and in fact, if you allow your other AD to snowball into success, then champions like the Braum just become so much more successful. And this is just the risk you take. I was not a fan of the Nami pick, and in all honesty, like, I mean, the draft started well. Talia Sivir, very well-rounded, very safe. You can get away with a lot of things. The response from Lyon to deny the Braum, I like it. You could then rotate into a Taric. You could pick... obviously, a lot of junglers were banned, but even the Graves would have made a lot of sense. And then you could have just picked something tanky top. You could have gone for something like a Shen. not necessarily the best into a gangplank, but it's not the worst. You can have the Shen in the top. You then have a Taric support. You have a damage dealer in Graves and Sivir for these mid and late game fights. And then you have Talia for the zoning, for the zone controlling kite power. And so that would have been a stronger comp that would have done so much better into this lineup coming out from Lyon. But they sort of tunneled themselves going for this Hecarim and going for the Nami, which I just personally was not a fan of.
Look, and let me ask you this. What's scarier than an invulnerable Hecarim with a Shen riding him into the backline? That could have been wonders for these guys.
It certainly could have been. I mean, the combo has been well known throughout the world. LCK, Europe, just that submarine setup where you have the Hecarim to just dive into the backline, just really impressive overall.
Look, and once again, we're going to send it over to Hingers with an interview with Lyon Gaming's undefeated team.
That, guys, I'm now joined by Odi from Lyon Gaming, who have now gone 4-0. How do you feel being top of the table?
Ahora ustedes que llevan 4-0, ¿cómo se siente estar en el tope de la competencia?
La verdad se siente muy bien. No sabía que íbamos a llegar tan lejos. Pensaba que al menos iba a ser dos victorias y 2 derrotas, pero pues hemos trabajado muy duro y pues estamos ganando todo ahorita.
It feels awesome. They didn't think they would win all of this, but actually half of it. So they trust they will keep on going well.
Excellent. Were you guys surprised about the composition the other team let you get? Were you surprised they didn't ban out Lucian for that game?
¿Hubo alguna sorpresa en relación a la composición del otro equipo? Por ejemplo, no banear a Lucian, ¿podrían haberlo hecho?
No creo que Lucian sea un ban, pero siento que no hemos jugado muy buenos matchups en bot lane. Pero la verdad me sorprendió mucho el pick de Hecarim. No lo tengo muy bien como que pensado que pudieran haberlo jugado. Pero se dio que nuestra bone estuvo muy fuerte, tuvimos un GP muy sólido y casi pues así de destrozos.
He actually thinks that banning Lucian was not something he thought it would happen. They have been doing well on the bot lane. What mostly surprised him was actually picking Hecarim on the other side. It was a bit unexpected, so to say, but they're having a strong bot lane, so they think it's good.
Earlier today, we spoke to the Chiefs, who you haven't played yet, and they described you guys as quote lacking macro play. Do you feel like you'll be able to beat them when you play them in the rest of the tournament?
Hoy les hablaron a Chiefs, que ustedes todavía no han enfrentado, y ellos han dicho que ustedes no tienen como macro play, como una visión más amplia del juego. ¿Qué piensas de esto?
Bueno, creo que se equivocan. Nosotros hemos vencido a muchos equipos que ellos han sido derrotados, así que creo que vamos a dar un buen papel y pues callar la boca.
He thinks they're actually wrong because they actually beat teams that actually beat Chiefs.
Yeah.
So they're going to do their part and make sure they're shut up in the end.
Excellent. Thank you so much for the time. Congratulations on the win and being top of the table. And that's all from us. We'll send it back to you guys in the studio.
Well, there you go. The gauntlet has been thrown now from the Lions. They are definitely willing to fight the Chiefs.
Look, you heard him say it. Chiefs, shut up. We're going to beat you. So great confidence coming that once again. Thanks, Hingers, for being over there, getting our interviews. So Lyon Gaming, how can you not be confident? Sitting on 4-0, going into tomorrow, you got to be feeling good, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, the team as a whole has impressed me. We praised Saya on day 1. We praised Odi and Giral on day 2. And now we're playing White Lotus and RC on day 3. I mean, the team seems to have so many members that just step up when they need to. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how well they do throughout the rest of the tournament and how well they play up against tomorrow.
Well, that's what it takes to get yourself to Worlds. No one player is going to carry you there. You need a whole team of superstars throughout that roster. And this Lyon Gaming, is going to say White Lotus Gaming, this Lyon Gaming squad are doing just that. They're making me a believer.
Oh, yeah, that's definitely the case. And I'm looking forward to seeing what else they are able to bring out. They've definitely been using a wide range of strategies and champion pools. And I think that moving forward into tomorrow's games, they're just going to continue on with their impressive success.
Look, and we're going to have a look at the day 3 results and kind of catch you guys back up. If you joined us late or missed any of the ones, straight off we saw Dark Passage with a very, very cheeky win over Albus, Nox, Luna, and then Latin Gaming's. They're 4-0, so you kind of know how that one goes. They took out their partners, Chaos Latin Gamers, and of course, Chiefs Esports Club took it to INTZ in a very close game. Dark Passage once again getting another win over Rampage, who didn't look to be playing their best, and Lyon Gaming 4-0 against Saigon Jokers, making it look easy.
So some much needed wins for a lot of these teams. Dark Passage now maintaining at the top of the table, but nobody can quite yet rival Lyon. We thought that Albus would be the team to join them at the top, but for the time being, it is Lyon sitting solely in that first place position.
Yeah, no one's really been able to do anything about it. We talk about the top of the ladder. Let's have a look at the standings and kind of brief you guys there. There they are standing, the one and true number one. It's Lyon sitting on 4-0, while Chiefs and Dark Passage both on 3-1. Then rounding out the middle, it is ANX and INTZ. 2 wins apiece, but 2 losses for INTZ. Rampage picked up their first win in day 1, went winless throughout the next 2, and Saigon Jokers and KMV sitting all the way at the bottom, still hungry for that first win of the tournament.
So you can really see some gaps starting to develop now between the teams as we are about the halfway mark within this tournament. So it is really important that moving forward, these teams at the bottom end are able to pick up some kind of wins, because it is certainly going to be an uphill battle moving forward. You want to try and net yourself the top 4, but when you look at the competition, it's definitely going to be a struggle.
Look, that's exactly right. The competition's heated up, and it's heated up hot. Everyone been playing superbly. Of course, even in some of the losses, Saigon Jokers as well as the Chaos Latin Gamers both looked quite strong and had shown promise, but unfortunately just a few little mistakes that end up snowballing the game completely out of their control. They got to go into these next games thinking of how can we kind of put a band-aid on this.
They certainly have. And I mean, when we look forward to tomorrow's schedule, we do have to wonder whether or not things are going to get easier for them, or if they're still going to be going up against these top-ended teams that can really punish you for making these small mistakes.
Look, and there's a lot of strong teams. And speaking of tomorrow's schedule, we're going to get that up for you guys so you know exactly what you'll be seeing. Rampage taking on KMV. Once again, KMV still really looking for that first win. Then a massive title fight. You heard the interview. They want Chiefs to shut the hell up. Chiefs think they're overrated as Chiefs taking on Lyon Gaming game number 2. Then Albus Nox Luna will be taking it to Chaos Latin in game number 3. INTZ and Dark Passage going to be having a good game. Then to round us off tomorrow will be Saigon Jokers taking on Albus Nox Luna.
So a lot of exciting games tomorrow. Chaos Latin gamers have 2 games, which means that tomorrow is going to be a massive day. They have to make sure that they can net as many wins as they can. Rampage is definitely a team that I believe they have a good shot against, given that they are sitting at the bottom of the table right now. But when you look at going up against Albus Nox Luna, that could be a little bit of a tougher challenge. So a lot of exciting games tomorrow.
That's the thing, right? They're both versing Albus Nox Luna. So if they are able to kind of clinch out a win, we saw Dark Passage with a very cheeky win against them, going for that pseudo base race here and pulling out a win. It's showing that it can be done, and that could have been what Dark Passage needed to get that momentum and carry themselves to a few more victories. So if one of these teams are able to pick off the upset, it could just fill them with confidence and help them throughout the rest of this tournament.
But I mean, when we talk about games tomorrow, I feel like all eyes are going to be on the Chiefs versus Lyon. I feel like a bit of rivalry has now started to build up between these two teams. We can see Chiefs feeling very confident. Lyon, after today's performance, I feel like it's very difficult to argue with them being a top contender right now. And so I feel like this is definitely going to be the game that determines who can hold on to that first place spot.
Look, you're exactly right. And they said they threw down the gauntlet, so they want nothing more than to go up against each other in the Rift and see if these words can be translated into action.
I'm really excited to see it. Really excited to see how the draft unfolds as well, because both teams, it seems like Chiefs got what was comfort pick today. Lyon seem to have a very deep champion pool where they can bring out anything in any sort of situation. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing how things play out. The mid lane for me, I think, will be the most exciting matchup, because we know how influential a good performance in the early stages of the game can be for their mid laner in particular. Whereas if he's having a rough time, sometimes he can go overboard a little bit, whereas if he has a good performance, he's considered one of the best players in Oceania.
Look, that's one of the things that I've been really loving about this tournament is every single lane has had the potential to excel and show the value in the game. But guys, that's all we got time for. We are going to wrap things up here tonight. So thank you all so much for watching, and tune in same time tomorrow.